Podcast star Joe Rogan went viral over the weekend for this conversation with Rolling Stone founder Jan Wenner about government regulation of the internet. Let's watch.
I love the internet's great, and I love social media, but like every other industry in the United States, it has to be regulated. If you don't regulate it,
but who regulates it?
The government.
Do you trust the government to regulate the internet?
Absolutely.
You trust the people that got us into the Iraq war under false pretenses to regulate the internet? Do you think that makes any sense?
Well, wait a minute. I would not. The people who got us into the Iraq war.
It's the government.
Was the politicians.
It's the government.
In the end, yes, it's the government. But who else is going to regulate?
But if they're going to be in power and they're regulating the internet, they're going to regulate the internet in a way that suits their best interests. The same way they do with the banking industry, the same way they do with the environment, the same way they do with energy, the same way they do with everything. What represents their interests? There's you're talking about so much money involved in disseminating information in a very particular way.
So I thought that was a very interesting discussion on Rogan because Rogan, I thought, really owned him in the debate, to use that terminology. And of course, it's a much longer conversation. But so Jan Wenner was very involved in Rolling Stone magazine. As a kind of countercultural icon or a countercultural trend setter. Yeah. And is now coming to the place that so many former, I think, interesting countercultural media organizations that have over time become mainstream now regurgitate this whole, oh no, there's too much misinformation, we need the government to be in control of it, so then that'll all be fixed. And Rogan pointing out, very reasonable issues with that, and pointing out all the time that government has gotten it wrong or mainstream thinkers have gotten it wrong, which is something you'd think the founder and founding editor of Rolling Stone or publisher, whatever his position was, would understand. And he's just like, no, I totally trust the government to be in charge of it. And then he tries to distinguish between politicians who are not trustworthy and the people who staff government agencies. I don't think that you probably know from your work in policing that those people are not. Actually, the politicians are crooked but accountable nominally because they can be voted out. The career staffers that you can't do anything about are, in my view, often an even bigger problem. But it's the whole put the government in charge of the internet project because there's too much, and they're saying that because they don't like that there is information being shared on social media that is contrary to what Jan Wenner thinks you would want to know. He thinks that if left to their own devices, people will just consume bad information. And of course, yes, the internet has bad information out there, but it's like a very who watches the Watchmen kind of thing. Well, you're saying we trust government officials or staffers to determine what's true or not. How would that work?
Unexpected plot twist. I agree with Rogan on this issue. I do. I'm wary. I'm wary. I think we have to start talking about the motivations. A lot of these people. I think we live in a time where a lot of people that wouldn't have had access to media and access to news are able to get their foot in the door. Are able to be people that people refer to as thinkers. Are able to put out different ideas and move conversations forward. I think a lot of news now is being driven by online journalists and these conversations. And I think a lot of these people that were traditionally in these spaces don't like that. I think they would like it to be more of the club it was, a much smaller claim on this information and what's put out there. And so I don't think the motivations are, one, that genuine, but two, I just don't think there's any place for the government to be regulating the internet. It can only go bad. And the same conversations we had about the misinformation boards, even with the company policies, it's just a bad idea. I can't see how we could possibly think it would go well, because what is the government? I mean, historically, what is the government going to let us say, or what does the government decide? There's a whole reason why we have free speech. Free speech is a protected right, because there's already this idea that without that, you'll be censored. Certain information won't be able to get out there. So if you get into the business of, also, it just seems like an overwhelming task, regulating the internet. I don't even know how they would go about doing something like that, but I think it's a bad idea. I think in general, America has too much regulation, period. I think America is just way too involved in every aspect of feeling like you don't get to control all the information that people say, espouse their viewpoints, what they talk about, what they do online. I think it's an absurd let me not say it's absurd, but I think it's an unreasonable position to want the government to come in and take over and to essentially more police our lives, but just in a different way. So
a project that is in many ways precluded by the First Amendment.
Yes,
yeah, there's
absolutely.
only so much, if it came to it, the Supreme Court would even let you do on this subject, because we have very broad free speech rights, even to say things that are wrong or things that are hateful or things that are like, those things can be bad, and you're supposed to call them out and criticize them. And social media companies can come up with new rules to kind of deal with that, and we can criticize them if we think they go too far, as I often do, and we often criticize on this show. But you can't bring in the government to enforce it, because it's going to get worse if you do that, and also the First Amendment largely stops you. So right now, the policy fight, to get a little bit more granular, that's going on, and the Supreme Court is going to hear cases on this front, is over this Section 230, which is the current regulation for the internet. That what it does is it is written in such a way that basically keeps the platforms themselves don't incur liability for the speech that occurs when I or you or anyone else speaks, which is what allows the internet to be the way it is. Because obviously, if you could sue Twitter for something I say, then Twitter wouldn't let you post anything.
Absolutely not.
That would be the end of that.
Right.
So if people I'm sure there are people who are like, oh, that's not so bad. Nobody, Twitter gone, Facebook gone. But I think for those of us who have, despite warts and all, have found value in communicating with other people across the vast distances of what is allowed by social media and all sorts of other tech innovations over the last few decades, that is all imperiled by changing the Section 230 regulation or some of these other things. Conservatives have gotten it in their head that, if we get rid of Section 230, that'll punish tech companies for having censored us. Like, well, it will punish them in that then the whole thing will cease to exist, and there will be there will be more censorship. Yeah. Because if they're responsible for the things you say, they're not going to let you post at will, or they're going to only say approved people, only blue checkmark people can post, only good mainstream liberals that we trust. So it's a whole secret plot, not secret, but misguided plot to actually undo the speech we're allowed to have right now.
Yeah. Listen,
so the Supreme Court's going to weigh in on it, so we're going to see. It's going to be interesting.
I can't, the current Supreme Court is a Mickey Mouse operation, so I can't have too much faith.
But
in
a very pro First Amendment. Even in a lot of their First Amendment cases are 9-0 or 8-1.
Yeah, Mickey Mouse Court, but they'll do that. But as far as, I'm not some big free speech champion, and I also am not somebody who cares about the framers' intent or originalism or those things. They not hold a particular seat of value in my heart. Nonetheless, for these purposes, I think it's important for people who do care about that and are constantly talking about free speech to remember this has been contemplated. Like, when we got the right to free speech, like our founders, this is discussed. If you go get the Federalist Papers, you go look at Federalist number 10, they did think about a world where there would be groups and people coming up with ideology and information and spreading that. That's something they contemplated and still wanted. You know what I mean? They wanted that. They knew there would be media that would be powerful. Yes, very much so. So this idea that we keep, as we don't like the way the world is changing or the internet or who's getting to say and who gets to, large platforms, we pretend as though this is completely this new issue that we need to start limiting our idea of freedom of speech. No. When we got the right, when we thought about it, when we decided why it was valuable, when we decided why we needed a media to serve as checks and balances, when we decided we needed people to be able to freely criticize their government or talk about what they want and spread these ideas, we thought about it with this in mind. So I'm going to have to go with Rogan on this one. Yeah.
Same.
What do you know?
Well, Olayemi, it was wonderful having you in studio today. Great seeing you.
Thank you.
And we'll love to have you back again.
Thank you, my favorite baby Ryan Seacrest.
Thank you very much. Well, be sure to like, share, and subscribe so you never miss any content. For those of you who like to listen while on the go, we're now available anywhere that podcasts are available themselves. And we're going to check out Roku, which we're also now available on, and it's very exciting, and I'll see you all tomorrow.